I want to welcome everyone to the Light Board meeting for the 12th of April. First thing to do is call to order, and then we'll go over the upcoming meetings and minutes. So we have a meeting on April 26th, and then another one on May 10th, and then the rest can be read off of the agenda. And I believe we have a set of minutes. Pam, do you want to take that?
Sure. So as you might have noticed, the minute backlog persists, and Karen sent me out of order the March 8th minutes, which I then edited and sent to you. Got helpful comments. Thanks, Warren. And I also, Laura looked at the minutes because of what we had discussed and was helpful. I don't think I've heard from Alice or Brian, but on the strength of Warren's review, Laura's look at them with me, and my review and editing, I suggest we vote to approve just to move this along.
Yeah, I replied with, you had some questions in the email. I replied to that. So you should have that in the title for Ken.
I got that, and I incorporated that.
Great. And I don't go through the minutes with a fine-tooth comb. If I don't see anything stand out that I need content-wise, then I don't usually do the edits, but I'm ready to approve it.
Alice, are you okay?
I am okay. I was a bit overwhelmed when I got those, and I just couldn't review them. So I'm going with the fact that you've reached out, people have responded, you've got people's input.
Yeah, no, I think we're good with these.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes from the meeting on April 8th.
I think it was it March 8th?
March 8th, sorry. You're right.
All right. I got a second from Warren. Pam?
Yes.
Warren?
Yes.
Alice?
Yes.
And I agree as well. So we've approved the March 8th minutes. And next on the agenda is an update from Dave. Oh, it looks like Dave froze.
Somebody can pinch him, wake him up.
No, he's having a
There
little.
he is. He's getting in again.
Okay, yeah, he seems to be having a little technical difficulties.
That doesn't work, Brian. Maybe you can do the broadband update first.
Jason, do you want to do the broadband update?
Happy to do it. Yep. So I'm happy to announce that Dan Robinson has accepted the position of telecom technician, and he will be starting April 24th. Dan is currently working at the Wellesley Municipal Light Plant, supporting their fiber broadband initiative. Wellesley has a business-only fiber network that serves a few hundred customers, and he, prior to that, worked for a contractor that we, Concord Broadband, use to pull fiber often, and he's actually worked in Concord, so we couldn't have asked for a more qualified candidate who knows the business and will be able to hit the ground running. We're very excited to bring Dan on board, and that will leave only one position vacant, which is network engineer. We've had a tough time filling this, but we have had some promising leads lately. We've been working with recruiters who have a state contract, and we've been working with other partners for advertisements, and we've had some promising interviews, and we're setting up some second round interviews. So that's promising developments there. I'm happy to announce that Concord Broadband has been accepted into the Affordable Connectivity Program. This will let eligible Concord Broadband households or customers receive a subsidy of up to $30 per month from any of our tiers. This is active now. Customers can go to the URL at the FCC's website that's in the monthly update. We are going to be doing marketing outreach efforts to existing customers and put this on our website and trying to get some information out there, include on our order forms. And I wanted to thank the customer service team specifically. I know Dale's been working with them a lot to make sure that everybody's up to speed on the program in case customers call and ask questions about it so that we all are familiar with it. And then lastly, I just want to provide an update on multi-dwelling units. This is an issue that was targeted in the Fiber Broadband Completion Task Force's report, and something that we have been working on for a long time. So we've recently started some conversations with folks regarding the multi-dwelling unit, both on the vendor side to figure out what solutions might work to creatively think outside the box to bring service to these locations, and also start conversations directly with management or board members of different locations. So we had a great meeting at Concord Green 2 weeks ago, and we've been doing some sort of initial feasibility research to see, get some cost information and figure out how something might be possible, what technology we might be able to use, and just keep those conversations moving. We're going to be compiling sort of a list of all the MDUs in town and identify, what the barriers are and what the estimated cost would be, what technology could be used, and then have that available just for discussion so that we can, use that to make strategic decisions and conduct capital planning so that we can aim to cross some of those locations off our list. We do continue to get customers who reach out eager for service from these locations. So it's not that they don't want service, it's just that we need to find a way to get in there and provide that service. So I'm excited about the work that's been happening on that front. And that's really all I had for my update today. Oh, you're muted, Brian.
It's great to hear that the only one position is yet to be filled. That's great progress. How are we going to promote the link to the affordable connectivity program?
So first of all, usually when people express interest in getting Concord broadband, they fill out a form, and then there's a walkthrough to determine if their location is suitable and what, where they would like their service and things like that. So that will be a prime opportunity for us to explain the program and just mention it, have it on our documentation, and make sure people can get to that website. Other people call or they come to set up new electric service, so they walk in the door. So making sure that we have, signage and handouts and information on it there so that new customers can get directed in that direction. But then we also know we have some customers today who qualify for the rate assistance program on the electric side. And so we can do some targeting of those customers, but also just letting everybody know, because we can't know who is eligible and who's not, and that may change from time to time. So we'd like to get something in our blasts or in future mailing so that everybody is aware of that. And then obviously prominently displaying it on the website. So those were the options that we were thinking of initially, but we're certainly open to suggestions too.
That's great. As long as we're working to get word out and help people through the process of filling out the forms and getting them connected, that'd be great. Any other questions on the broadband update? Seeing none. Dave, do you have good connectivity?
Well, let's hope my microphone and camera don't, go out again, but yeah, I should be okay.
Great.
So we received the second level 3 DC fast charging station, which we're waiting on. So it came in as scheduled. These are the 2 stations that are going to be installed at Ride Out Playground parking lot in West Concord. So the crews will start building the underground infrastructure to feed these stations. And once the project's complete, we'll submit the required paperwork to receive the grant money that we're, it's $100,000. So we've got a tight little window here to finish, but I'm optimistic and I think everything will get done on time. So.
And do you have a completion date that you're targeting?
Yeah, June.
June. Okay.
You may recall that we budgeted to do tree trimming this year. In the budget we had just over 350,000. We put out bids. We received 4 bids. One bid was not accepted because it was incomplete, and another bid was withdrawn by the bidder. So we reviewed the remaining 2 bids, and we're in the award process. So that that should be completed here shortly, and we'll get started with the northwest quadrant of the town. So we're going to do about a quarter of the town this year, and then follow with the quarter. So it's a 4-year cycle now.
Okay.
We're a little behind on that because we did bid it once, but we had some inaccurate information, so we had to redo it. So that's why we're behind by about a month. Digger derrick replacement. This is a truck that is used to set poles. We're in the process of replacing the 2002 International. It's nearing the end of life. The interesting thing is the truck's got a 2-year lead time now, which is what we're seeing with a lot of other items as well. And the price is going up from, normally a truck like this would be 275 to 285,000, depending on the options that we select. And the pricing for this truck came in a little over 485,000. So significant.
485?
Yeah, 485,000.
Wow,
Wow.
that's a huge price increase.
Yeah, and we're seeing this, it's not just, bucket trucks, fire trucks, it's across the board. So it's something that we really have to think about when we're doing our capital plan. On the power supply side, we have a commodity plus rec contract that's attractive from Hydro-Quebec. It's up to 2 megawatts. And the contract would go from January of 2024 to October of 2028, and it'd be delivered at the Mass Hub. So, the contract would be executed simultaneously with the sale of HQ rights, and the prices, like I said, are coming back on this favorable. On the energy management side, interest in CMLP's electric vehicle rebate is accelerating. In January and February of 23, enrollment in the EV miles off-peak charging incentive program was 80% higher than during the same period last year. Applications for the $250 home EV charging system rebate went up 60%. So we're excited about that. I did put in a couple things about feedback from customers. I'm not going to go through those. Concord's heating and cooling coach program was mentioned in an article in Canary Media about growing demand for heat pump coaches in Massachusetts, and the coaching programs are rising to meet the demands. The article underestimates our coaching assisted installations in 2022, which were over 100, meaning that the installations rate quadrupled from 21 to 22. So we're seeing some very favorable activities in the energy management side. And the only other thing I have is last week was CMLP's 125th anniversary, and we had citation from State Rep Cataldo. We were also received a plaque from NEPA, and the select board did a proclamation. So it was good. And we had a little luncheon for the employees.
Excellent. Anything else to update?
No, that's it, I think.
Oh, great. Alice,
A quick question.
I've got a kid knocking at the door. I'll be right back.
Is the hydroelectric power, the Hydro-Quebec project, the one that has been disputed and multiple times been voted down by the voters in Maine, is that the same project?
No. Laura, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. No, this is not new capacity, Alice. It is existing hydro generation. It would come with Massachusetts CES RECs, which is for non-carbon emitting existing resources.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Sorry to step away. I got a little distracted there. Any other questions? I think I heard the end of that answer, and I think that was my question for Laura. So I'll go back to the video to see exactly what it was, but sounds like we're going to get Rex as well. Yeah. All right. Seeing no other questions for the update, let's go on to our first agenda item, which is the upcoming meeting. So we've talked previously about another public forum to address nuclear, and I requested that we expand that to a discussion about our portfolio and carbon intensity. I want to ask the board kind of the scoping questions for this meeting. So what topics do we want to cover, not cover? The target is sometime in May or June to have this meeting. And I don't see any of the content being new. We don't have to do anything really to develop the content, because this is what we've been doing is we're just sharing with the community what we've been up to and how we're meeting Article 51 and how contracts come together and the carbon intensity of the electricity. So as you know, the audience is going to be the general public, what do you feel we should cover in discussing this so that we can put nuclear into context? And I can share, Dave, do you mind giving me share permission? I'll just share the
Sure.
website and
Yep, you can now, Brian.
great. So this transition that we've been doing, a lot of people in the general public are not realizing that we're at the point where we're reaching 94% non-emitting in discussions. And I want to share with the community how we're doing that and get feedback on that process. You know, Article 22 asks us to do more in-town solar, or to define a schedule for meeting our own goal of in-town solar. But a lot of people have been saying that they want to see more solar because we need to reduce our emissions. And I think this audience understands RECs, but I think the general public still struggles with the idea of RECs being the accounting and seeing the renewable energy there in the community. So nuclear general pricing, but I want to hear from you what you want to see in this kind of meeting. What do you feel the community needs to hear? Alice.
So this is my personal view. The general public does not want to get into the nitty-gritty of our entire power supply. That's my sense.
Mhm.
That the reason that we were thinking about this meeting really came from Terry Ackerman. And she was quite upset that there was no public dialogue about us expanding our part of the portfolio for nuclear. And I think that I would prefer, rather than opening everything up for discussion, there's enough emotionally charged issues around the issue of nuclear power that we really need to address it, and there are pros and cons. And I think that we would be better served, we would serve our customers by just limiting this conversation to the role of nuclear power in our carbon-free future. So I know there are a lot of other issues involved, and I know there are pricing issues. I know that chart is really attractive to us, but I keep thinking that people who come to these meetings will either have our followers, people who are generally following the light plane, but if we want to broaden the dialogue and hear the emotionally charged discussion around nuclear, we won't, I think we'll be diverted by those who are, you know, embedded in understanding much more deeply how the power supply questions come up and how they are resolved. So my recommendation would be that we limit the conversation in a public forum and have it about nuclear only. Well, you know, obviously you have a different opinion, so I'm just putting mine out there because.
Yeah, I've expressed this opinion before, but my concern is if we make it a discussion of, you know, do we do nuclear or not, it doesn't, without educating the public on why nuclear is in our portfolio, which is due to the dispatchability, the lower cost, and the non-emission, no need for a REC. So that's the benefits of nuclear. I know there's concerns about nuclear. It's not additional to renewables in the state. There are drawbacks. But I want to make sure it's not, I like it, I don't like it, a survey. I want to make sure we get more context.
So in my mind, I'm thinking that we have a panel discussion with
Okay.
both, with experts who are pro and con. There's some great people in town and that they are familiar with other people on both sides. There's definitely a debate between the Sierra Club and the Union of Concerned Scientists on this. And I think it's reasonable for us to present the various views of nuclear because it's an emotionally charged issue. It's not just one of power supply or meeting our goals, but is there a future that includes nuclear as part of the long-term, climate change initiative globally? And what are the
Okay.
risks? There are people who just like Terry, who are just concerned about the risk of nuclear, that there's too much risk to take. And so it's a different discussion, I think. But I understand what you're saying. Giving a bigger
Yeah.
context is important. But most people are not as educated as you are.
Right. And I hadn't thought of doing some kind of panel discussion. And I think that's a good idea. Having someone for, stopping nuclear, having someone for expanding nuclear and bringing in people who understand this. That's a very interesting idea. Pam.
Yeah, I support Alice in the view that we limit it to nuclear, which I think is what we had discussed earlier, that there would be this this focused discussion. I wonder, what is the proper role of the public in a decision like this? And I'm not trying to discourage public engagement, but this is a very complicated issue. And it is an emotional issue that can easily morph into fear about 3 Mile Island-like things and other things. And I really do wonder, what are we asking to accomplish here, either to educate or to actually get a point of view from the public that then we will pay attention to. I'm a little wary of engaging too much, like locking into needing to know what the public, I'm sorry to say this, but I mean, it's a very technical issue. So I think that one question for me is, what are we trying to do here? Are we educating, or are we getting opinions that will be seriously considered, which of course all public opinion should be. I also think that there is the emotional charging of this is extremely important, and that there are many that I think we should be making it very clear the benefits of nuclear and also the actual facts of deaths from such dramatic events as the Japan event and others. So I think education is really an important piece of it. But I do wonder what the board thinks about my earlier question about the point of the whole thing. But I'm with Alice on narrowing it.
Yeah, so my understanding of what we were trying to accomplish with this was we have already signed some contracts for Seabrook, I think 3, and we've been offered additional contracts for Seabrook. And so we paused on signing new contracts for years out because we wanted to have this discussion to understand from the community the sentiment on whether or not they wanted to see nuclear stay in their portfolio long-term and we continue to renew contracts, or whether or not we want to increase our amount of nuclear, or if we want to stop any future signing of nuclear contracts. So this was to get the community's sentiment on whether or not we wanted to do what we want to do in the future when we get offered nuclear contracts. So that's what I'm hoping to get out of it.
So sentiment from the public preceded by, shall we say, a panel discussion where there is a real effort to explain in plain English what it's all about and the actual risk. I mean, the risk is, as we know, is mostly on,
Yeah.
where you get, what do you do with the stuff when you have an error and all that sort of, and clean up and retiring and all those things. But anyway, I just want to make sure that we know what we're doing here. And you're focusing more on the perspective of the community and not so much on the educational aspect. Is that right?
Yeah, I was going into this conversation thinking about more how does a nuclear contract fit in with our portfolio? But with the idea of a panel discussion and education on the history and facts related to nuclear, that kind of adds or changes the direction of where I was headed. This was more about why are we agreeing to these contracts? And the answer for me would be the low cost, the dispatchability, and the low emissions. That's why we view it as a good thing, but we need to balance financial versus our goals of actually putting more renewables in New England. You're asking more to talk about the safety of nuclear, which wasn't primarily in my first scope.
Yeah, well, I want us to emphasize, I don't have a point of view here too much. I think it's important that I do have a point of view, but I'm more interested in what the board thinks we're trying to do here and what we're inviting the public to think that it's being involved with.
Yeah, and I think the short answer would be, when we're offered future contracts, what do we really know that the community feels on those nuclear contracts, whether or not they want to see them expanded because they're of financial value, or whether or not they don't want us in them at all, or if they want to maintain the level of contracting that we have. That's the output I need.
And what do we do with that output?
Make decisions as a board on whether or not to accept future nuclear contracts.
Based on public input and our own expertise and interests, is that right?
Yeah, based on the guidance we get from this meeting and our feelings as board members.
I think we really need to know what we're doing there. And I'm not.
I think that is pretty clear. It's how do
I'd
we
like to-
get the sentiment from the community?
Well, Warren and Alice, I just wonder what you think.
Yeah, Warren, what's your idea?
Yeah, several things. First, yeah, I think the meeting should focus on nuclear, but I think it does need a 5 to 10 minute introduction at the beginning on our power supply and how nuclear fits into the mix of everything we're getting, both in terms of the cost of what we're paying and also the share of nuclear in the supply. Second, I think the discussion, the idea of a panel discussion of the reasons for include should not be specifically about the safety of nuclear power. It should be about the issue of the reasons for including nuclear in the power supply of a community like Concord, or the reasons not to do it. And presumably somebody who's arguing against it would bring up safety concerns, but the focus should be on the reasons for including nuclear or not including nuclear. I also don't buy that we're going to get the sentiment of the community in this meeting. We're going to get the views of a small number of residents that do not necessarily represent the majority sentiment in the community. And I look at it a different way. What we're getting is the views of some residents who hopefully will have interesting things to say. And those views can influence the decisions we make because they have interesting and persuasive things to say. But it's not because we're going to take a majority vote of the meeting and say that's the sentiment. It's going to be because somebody has something compelling to say that influences us whether or not that's the majority view in the town, because we're not going to know the majority view in the town from this meeting.
Okay, no, that's a good point. Alice,
Well, definitely, thanks, Warren. I appreciate that comment because I think I agree, but we never get a majority view in any public meeting, town meeting, or even townwide votes. So that's a limiting factor of our democracy, right? That not everybody participates. But it would be incumbent upon us to try to figure out how to reach people that we don't often hear from. And because the concept of nuclear power is just so emotionally charged. And I just want to caution us, from what we understand and know about risk communications, rarely can people who are emotionally charged about something hear the facts that would support one side or one view. So when we look at a percentage of a portfolio or the long-term economics of it in a portfolio, that's like noise, because people have an emotional response that just stops them from hearing hard facts. And that goes for the safety of nuclear power too. If you were one of those who changed yourself to Seabrook back in the 60s or whatever it was, 70s, you're not about to easily give up that part of yourself because somebody says it's actually pretty safe and actually it's the only future that we can sustain. Whatever those are, it makes people confront their own background and political persuasions. So I just want to caution us that if we go ahead with this forum in the way we're thinking about it, narrowing the scope to a discussion around nuclear, I think that we might consider bringing in somebody who can help us navigate the risk communication side so that we're talking with people in a way that those who have a difficult time accepting nuclear can hear sides and make a considered considered decision based on what they've learned from a esteemed panel of experts or whoever, not just us. But so that's my point, is that we have to consider how we communicate this because it's really critical to a lot of people. It's not as simple, do we want to get more Hydro-Quebec or nuclear? It's not an either or kind of decision in this case. It's much more involved. That's just my view.
no, that's good. I have a question for you, Alice, but I'm going to let Pam give a response.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that I wasn't suggesting we should focus only on safety, but I do think that safety has to be part of the mix and elaborated on cogently for this group, because I think that's what people mostly are interested in when they think of nuclear, and using Alice's term, when they become emotional about it. So I think that should be included. Warren's kind of formulation here also is very attractive to me, because I think, again, these are complicated issues, and our objective should be to gather if there is important valued benefit coming from some members of the public, as we would in any situation, that we incorporate that into our thinking. Getting a kind of democratic legislated view of this, however, I think is a mistake. And I think that, consistent with the way our government is supposed to work, I think Warren presents a structure whereby there are people who are given the authority and responsibility based on expertise or other factors to make decisions, and they sort out the values that are coming in from various sources. This is not a legislated item at this point, as far as I'm concerned, and does not.
When you say legislative item, you mean majority of the
Yeah,
view
I mean,
from the
I don't
meeting
see.
to not
Yeah.
lead our decision process.
Yeah, exactly. That's,
I think we all agree with that.
we do. Okay, I'm just wondering, I want to
Yeah.
make clear that Alice seemed to suggest, I want to make sure that we're absolutely clear about that. Alice, is that right?
That's right. I'm good. And I think your call for clarity and why we're doing this forum and what we intend to get out of it would be important. And I think that's, maybe a smaller group of us should think about those kind of questions and planning out, just like you did on the last public forum, where a smaller group invested some time in thinking it through.
Yeah, well, that was my question for you, Alice. Do you think that the public forum is the right way to answer the question, to collect guidance on how we should approach the next nuclear contract? is there a better method? Is a survey a better method? Is is this of value to reach out to the community, or do we have our own views and that's good enough as the people appointed to make these decisions? I feel it would be good to have some kind of public input, and I thought a public forum would be the best avenue. But there's risk communication is a really valid point. We could stir up things that we don't necessarily need to because it may not be of value to us. So do we feel we still should continue with the public forum? I want to make sure that I get your views on that.
I would, it would not have been something that would have occurred to me to do until it was brought up. But I thought that we had decided to do it. So, but I do think that the main source of information should be from those who are charged with setting this planning process, would be our own staff at the CMLP with the additional help of consultants or whomever, and getting, as I think Warren puts it delicately, input as we would from anybody, on that which is deemed to be useful and helpful input. And I think that it has to be made very clear going into it, what we're doing. The other thing I just wanted to ask is there are there any differences of opinion within the board itself about the general trajectory with respect to nuclear?
I think there when we talked about nuclear in the past, there has been some differences. I think if my memory serves correctly, I know I feel that we should have some nuclear in our portfolio, but it should not dominate our portfolio. And I would like to see us maintain the 36% that we have, and the third being nuclear because of the cost benefits. But if I remember correctly, Alice, I believe you previously have said you were not in favor of nuclear. That's inaccurate? Okay. And I know Terry was not in favor of it. So those we've done it in the past, which means that the majority felt we were in favor of it, but I think there's questions about just how much. Warren.
Yeah, a couple things. I have found a lot of these comments very useful, and especially Pam focusing on us why we're doing this, which I think is very good. And I do think we should go forward with the forum. I don't think before the forum we should spend a lot of time talking about our views on nuclear. In part, I don't think there's a dramatic difference between folks on the board, but the part of the reason for going into this is we should be going in with open minds and looking for input from the public. And it's after we get the input is when we should have a greater discussion about our own views. And so it doesn't appear like we're going into the meeting with our minds already made up on exactly what we're going to do. I think the idea of a panel discussion with a couple of experts, somebody on either side, would be good if we could get the right people who would really bring useful information to the table and could discuss the question in a sort of calm, non-emotional way. The question is whether we can find those folks.
Yeah. Before I go to you, Pam, I want to kind of try to summarize what I think I'm hearing. So it sounds like we do want to continue forward with the public forum, that we do want some kind of 10 to 15-minute introduction about nuclear and its role in the portfolio. And then we like the idea of a small panel with differing views that is calm and can kind of bring expertise to the discussions, and that the goal of the meeting is to hear from the community, to gather new ideas, to get a general sentiment from those in attendance, but not know that it's not necessarily a majority, and to help provide information for us to make decisions on future nuclear contracts. Is that a good summary of what we're trying to do?
Uh, yeah, I
Okay,
think,
Pam?
yeah, no, I think that's good. I would, just on the panel, I think it's the design of that panel becomes extremely important, as does who is on the panel. And I believe that there is a lot of work that has been done at MIT on nuclear that has, and I hope that we will be sure to look for the most able plain English speakers, of whom many I think exist in Massachusetts, especially. I would look at MIT.
Right. Warren, I know you know a lot of people that do these kind of topics. If anyone comes to mind, please email me and
Yeah, I will give it some thought. I don't know the exact right person at the moment. I think Pam is right. There are lots of people at MIT who do this. I'm not convinced that they're necessarily, some of the folks I know there who've done it are necessarily the right people, because they're too much in the technology world of nuclear and don't necessarily think of it in terms of the power supply for a community like ours, but I'll give it some thought. And yeah.
And Dave, quick question about E&E, who is providing these contracts. Do you feel there's someone there that would be good for this panel?
I think there's some options. I'll need to talk with John, but I think there's definitely some possibility there.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to add, Brian, if
Yeah.
I could,
Go ahead.
I think it's probably a good idea to kind of provide a 5-minute to 10-minute history on how we got here, right? I mean, we didn't just go out and decide to buy nuclear without going through a whole process, right? And we had Article 51 that says you can include nuclear. Then we had the board took a position on it back then, and then we moved forward. So I think it's important for the public to hear that,
Mhm.
just go after it without going through the process.
Yeah, that was definitely going to be part of that intro, that 5 to 10 minute intro, sorry, 10 to 15 minute intro. Laura.
I was just going to mention, I think we have a local author, Meredith Angwin, who's written very specifically about the role of nuclear in the New England power supply mix.
Oh,
Oh,
what's her name again?
Meredith Angwin, Angwin, I think.
Okay.
I can give you guys the name of the book that she recently wrote about it. I think she is local, so
Okay.
maybe that would be an option.
that would be
Right.
great.
Yeah.
And Alice, you had mentioned Sierra Club. Do you know anyone at Sierra Club that might be willing to speak?
I can certainly reach out. I'm happy to do a little bit of research and figure out some good people. I have a very close friend who had been head of UCS
Okay.
for a number of years. I thought I'd reach out to him. I don't think he'd be the person to speak, but he's still in that world.
Okay.
So I'd be happy to reach out to the folks in my circle, and I'll send you an email.
Excellent. And yes, if Laura, Dave, Warren, Alice, if you guys could email me anyone you feel would be a good candidate for this panel, I'd very much appreciate it. Pam, do you still have a question?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that I also have some contacts at MIT, and I understand Warren's point, and it's exactly the right point about plain English and being speaking to the audience that they're in front of. But I can send in maybe a name or two from MIT.
And I'd also like to limit this panel to no more than 3 people. I'm thinking someone strongly for, someone's against, and someone who maybe is in the middle, but more like an E&E, someone who is working with these contracts. So Those are the kind of people that I'm thinking about for the panel. Warren, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, no, that seems fine. I just looked briefly at Meredith Angwin's bio on her website, and she might be a good person, but she would definitely be a pro-nuclear person
Okay,
and very strongly nuclear. And so we should not think of her as a impartial person in the middle.
yeah, I'm thinking the person in the middle is not going to be really the complete expert, but more someone in the industry of these contracts. Uh,
Nobody's in the middle. Nobody.
yeah, I know.
I mean, nobody's in the middle. And strong views pro-nuclear, as you might imagine, to me are important to present if they're cogently presented.
Yeah. Seeing no more hands, I think we've got a good feel on the direction for this meeting. So I'm going to take a very quick comment from Pamela Dritt.
Thank you. I want to point out that in controversial issues, there is often not a pro and con. There is accuracy.
Yes. So I do
Please
want to make sure.
Don't set it up as we're having a controversy here and we're going to have a debate on the pro side and the con side, because there's many more than pro and con sides to most issues. And in issues like this, it's the accuracy and the technical truth side that needs to be supported and looked for. Not
Absolutely.
which
I think
one
that's
is the best.
I've
opinion.
written down calm and underlined it next to my notes. So yes, that is
And towards truthfulness,
yes.
not emotional.
Mark, a quick comment.
Okay, off mute. I think that I'd like you to go back to, I think it was Pam's question earlier about exactly what input the board is going to do and how you're going to behave relative to it. And I would also point out that it seems to me that it's important to understand what authority the board feels it has right now in terms of whether or not to sign a nuclear contract or not. And if you've already started to behave differently in anticipation of getting this input. Because I do think that at the end of the day, it has to do with how the broader power supply is being handled. And, it's important to understand our opportunities being missed or forestalled waiting for this input, which I think some of the other members of the board expressed is going to be ambiguous and incomplete at best. So I would encourage action. And I'm going to say this, I would also encourage you not to listen too much to select board members who have their opinion about what to do. Act on your authority and execute your office.
Yeah. And, I think that nuclear, this is new for our portfolio. So, we signed these contracts, I think 2019 or so. And this is the first time I've seen nuclear in our mix. So it created some questions in town, and I think we should get some good ideas from anyone in town that could give input and inform our decisions on future contracts. So
just one other quick thing. I was looking at the CMLP Light Board website and noticed that the renewable energy strategy and the utility scale solar strategy that are linked there are from 2010 and 2011 respectively. So that's starting to seem pretty long in the tooth.
Yep.
And so the discussion about what's the strategy now and is pretty important. And if those aren't the most current documents, then that might make sense to also review in the context of this, because it does raise those questions.
Yeah, so I think that your question of are those the most updated documents, I think if you look at our strategic plan as well as the climate action plan, those are more up to date, but very similar. Pam, did you have a comment before I close?
No, I might be through. This is an excellent discussion, and I think we've harvested, what we need to here. I mean, I am fascinated with Mark's question about what is the authority of the board. I mean, I think we need to be very clear about what our jurisdictional responsibilities are with respect to issues like this and rate setting and all that, of course, which we have a general understanding of, but I think it's good to revisit in these kinds of situations. The only other comment is, given the importance of the discussion with the town, I think we need a couple of people to work with you, Brian, maybe to design this meeting, and with input from, with Dave and Laura. But have you identified Warren as somebody really should be thinking about this with you? I just want to make sure we have
Well,
that.
let me work with staff and we'll move this forward and we'll see where we are. I don't think we need to. If you want, I can work with you on getting this meeting together. I think it'd be easier if I just take this feedback and put something together and verify that you guys still feel that's correct. Like when we get the idea of who the panelists will be, a quick review of those panelists and your opinions on the structure of the panel, I think I'd come back to the board for a 10-minute discussion about that.
Well, as long as we have input from the board,
Yeah.
don't have a fait accompli, that's all I need. But I do think.
Okay. Great. So I think we can move on to the next topic in our agenda, which is the advanced metering system update from Dave.
Sure. So just give you a little bit of background on materials and things of that nature. So on April 7th, the first 80 meters were scheduled to be shipped. We're checking with Eaton to make sure that actually happened. So hopefully we'll hear back today or tomorrow. The first batch of residential meters, 2,000, are scheduled to be shipped next month in May. We haven't heard that they're not on schedule, so that's good. We did receive the gateways, and that's going to be part of the network. So that'll be the first piece that we install. So what we've done there is we've pre-wired those. So they're all in the shop, pre-wired, ready to go. We ordered splice cases and ONTs that go inside of them. And so we'll bring the fiber into the gateway and have the ONT inside of that. So it's all in one enclosed device. So we don't have multiple things on the poles. So the brackets for the ONTs and the splice cases, those, we ordered those, and I think they've been shipped. And then the ONTs themselves, we ordered those, and those should be in, I believe, next week or the week after. So when those come in, we'll then have the fiber technicians pre-build those so that when the gateways go out in the field, the line crews will hook them up, power them up, and then the fiber team will come in and do the splice. So like I said, that's going to be the first piece that's built. And once those are provisioned, then we can start meter deployment. And the deployment itself, we're hoping around June to start that, assuming everything stays on schedule with shipments. So that's kind of the operational piece. What we're focused on right now is the communications plan. And we've done one insert in the bills by the numbers. We have 3 direct mail things we're going to be sending out. One's, to the general residential customers, a letter, an AMS brochure, and an info sheet and benefits sheet. We're planning to do a Q&A direct mail as well. We've been keeping the website updated, and we'll continue to do that. We're considering a constant contact newsletter. And we're going to try and work and get a news article on the Concord Bridge. We'll continue with bill messages and bill inserts. We're going to use Smart Hub messages and links and use news and notices as well. So that's kind of the stuff that we have laid out in the communications plan. I don't know if anyone has any input on the communications from the board, but that's what our plan was with that piece.
Yeah, with the communications plan, Alice was with us in that meeting and she pointed out that, you know, we need different types of communication pieces, one for, you know, focused on just telling residents what the benefits are for this and why they should be excited for it. One more explaining the project and the breadth of the detail that goes on with that. What is your plan for kind of these mixed messages for different audiences? So you've these pieces are going to be designed for different groups, or how is that going to come together?
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea. I mean, we did one already. And I think there's different stuff that's going to go in each one, you know, because the Q&A is a good example, right? We have had, you know, maybe a dozen customers call and have questions and, you know, nothing overly difficult to handle, but I think for us, we want to get as much information out as we can to as many people as we can, and we're trying to do it in a diverse way.
And what expectations are you setting with the community for timelines for rollout and so forth?
Yeah, so we'll have you know, the website, and we're going to update the website with, you know, we're going to be in this area, you know, in the next week or 2 weeks, whatever, and we're going to reach out to the customers in those areas beforehand so that they know we're coming, so there's no surprises. And that is a process that's worked well in the past, and hopefully it will hold form again this time. You know, and there's going to be people that contact us, and the reason why it's important to get in touch with these customers is, as we all know, we have a lot of people working from home now, and they may have a meeting and you know, can't get their power shut off at a certain day. So we want to get as much of that information as we can so that there's the least amount of disruption as possible.
Okay. Warren.
Yeah, I wanted to really sort of praise the staff for the amount of attention you're giving to communication and the diverse approaches you're thinking of taking. At the risk of being critical, and I don't want this taken the wrong way, I don't think that first bill insert was a good start to the campaign. It way too dense. And it's not, I'd like to encourage you to think of documents with headlines, subheads, smaller points, key, you know, if you look at you know, blog entries today, things like 5 key takeaways, 3 key points, a document, everything in relatively small type and 2 or 3 pages long is probably not the ideal way to get people excited and understanding what's going on. And I'd be happy to, you know, if anybody, I don't want to insert myself where it wasn't needed, but I'd be happy to review a document or give some thoughts about something.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that, you know, the technical, having at least one technical piece so that those, you know, geeks like me can understand more detail. But you're right, the mass communication should be more light. That was Alice made the same point in a separate meeting. Alice.
So we had talked about the way that we would do the rollout of the smart meters was to have a trial or a subgroup of people to see that it's all working and have, you know, volunteers who participated in the first run of that rollout. Are we still thinking about doing that? And how would you think that we should be doing it? I mean, I certainly be willing to sign up for being in the pilot.
Yeah, so we can't really, solicit for people to participate in a pilot per se. And the reason why is we have to build the system from the gateways out. So if we said, hey, who's interested in being part of the pilot? And we had 20 people from different ends of town, they wouldn't communicate back. So what the plan is to do the first month with just the small group of metering staff, hitting an area, testing things out, making sure everything's functioning properly before we get full scale. So it's kind of a pilot, but it's a smaller one, and we'll pick the area that will work best with the network.
So it's
That
it's
makes
more of
sense.
a installation pilot than it is a time of use pilot, which is something else that we've talked about.
So once we get the residential meters installed, even if it's a smaller portion, we could do a pilot of time of use then.
And that's what we had talked about doing, I think, and we should just consider whether we think it's important still. I think there might be some things to work out before it goes wide scale.
Yeah, I think I want to separate the discussion of installation of the
point.
AMS system from the time of use pilot. I think there should be a pilot for the time of use. I agree. Any other updates related to AMS?
I think that's really it.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? No? Great. Then let's continue on to collections and shut-offs. Dave, do you want Carol to take this?
Yeah, Carol's gonna take the lead on this one.
Good morning. The winter moratorium on disconnection for service was lifted April 1st, and we're now into the full process of collections and physical disconnections. This seemed like a good time to kind of circle back and give the light board an update on collections activities that have happened over the winter months. Customer service, as you probably are aware, we provide collection services for electric, water and sewer, and broadband as well. And what we tend to do maybe every 2 to 3 years is go back and review our documentation and our processes. We like to do a kind of an outreach to our fellow Mass municipals and get a feel for what their collections processes are. We also touch base with the Department of Public Utilities just to see if there have been any updates in their regulations. And then we spend a good couple of months reworking our documentation. This year, or this winter, I should say, we made quite a few edits to our past due and disconnect notices. And after we've done our updates on both of our policy documentation and the notices, we do another circle back to the DPU and have them review everything for us just to make sure that it looks good from their perspective. So we went through all of that process, and we're now at a point now that we're incorporating all of those changes as our current best practices. And we've made it through our first billing cycle of customers for full collection process. Some other highlights, I gave you a short snapshot of our 60 and 90 day past due. It's kind of too early to tell if there's a positive trend here, but comparing March to April, it does look like we've had some improvement. Dave, I don't know if it's helpful at all to pull up that document.
Sure. Give me a second.
I have it up if you want me to share, Dave.
Can you see that?
Yes. Do you
Yes.
mind making making it the whole screen because you're sharing your desktop?
Yeah. Okay, how's that?
So that chart there, as I said, that's a very brief little look at where we are. This is for all service providers in the first section of the chart. So that would be for electric, water and sewer, as well as broadband. For electric, we focus on 60 and 90 days for our collections and shut off disconnection activities. For water and sewer, we look at 30 days, same thing for broadband. Water and sewer, we don't actually disconnect service, although in an extreme situation, we would be able to make a case with the DPU to disconnect water service. So again, it's kind of too early to see if there's any type of a trend, but looking at where the 60 and 90 days for all service providers, it has improved over March to April. I didn't include the numbers from a year ago in from 2021, but we're substantially better in every category compared to the previous couple of years during the pandemic. And then I did a breakout of just the electric service. And again, it's looking more positive. And I think all of the efforts that we maintained during the winter months has helped us come out of the winter moratorium looking pretty decent as far as past due amounts go. All winter, we continued to send out past due notices to residential and commercial customers. We didn't actually do any disconnection notices or physical disconnects during the winter time. Let's see, in mid-March, customer service had collections roundtable, and we invited several different departments and agencies, including Council on Aging, Social Services, the Housing Authority, representative from the Hugh Cargill Trust, Community Chest, and St. Vincent de Paul. And we had people from telecom and the water department as well. And this was a great opportunity for everybody to share different ideas, concerns. We had a lot of new faces in the group this year. So we actually went through a lot of our procedures and showed our past due and disconnect notices to the group, and explained the process that the customer service reps go through to actually do their collections efforts. And there was a really good exchange of information, and we haven't done one of these roundtables in close to 3 years. I think it was right before the pandemic hit that we did our previous one. So it was kind of good timing again. In late March, we picked up again with commercial collections and disconnections. We had one customer that was scheduled for disconnection, but they ended up paying before we actually shut their service off. And getting back to the residential side of things, again, the moratorium was lifted April 1st. And last week, we actually had our first billing cycle and full collections process. And going into that, we had 5 customers who were scheduled for disconnection. One of the customers paid the evening before the disconnect day. We disconnected 3 customers and they paid during the day, and they were all reconnected. And we still have one customer who has two different accounts that are disconnected still. And, you know, our customer service reps and metering folks kind of do an additional investigation, trying to get a hold of a customer in this case. And anecdotally, we were told by a neighbor that the customer was in Europe for an extended vacation. So at this point, we've done everything that we can, and we're hoping that at some point we'll hear back from the customer. And our next disconnection processes will be next week, and then during the week of April 25th. So I think that's pretty much all of my update.
Excellent. A question. So in the communications of the disconnect process, you always let people know about the assistance programs that are available and the options available to them should they find themselves financially strapped and unable to pay.
Yeah, that's correct.
It sounds like that customer that is still disconnected, it sounds like they're just not receiving messages and are unaware. So hopefully when they return, that will get sorted out.
Yes.
Any other questions for Carol? Thank you, Carol. It's great to hear an update. It's great to see collections are coming down as the outstanding for 90 days. The document cites the total amount outstanding. How many customers are at 90 days? Is that the 5 that you talked about, or the 5 beyond the 90 days?
The 5 would be at the 90 days.
Okay. So, and then you said there was 1 commercial customer. So when we see 38,000 outstanding from what sounds like 6 customers, that includes the commercial customer.
That's correct. And if I can just add the comment that I should have made earlier on that little chart, the total line, it should say total due. And if you go to try to add up the columns, they don't foot out, but that's because the total amount includes current and 30-day amounts as well as 60 and 90 days.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you. We will move on to the next discussion. Let's see. For the town meeting article discussions. Dave, would you like me to lead this, or would you want to lead this?
I can if you want.
That'd be great.
All right, so I think there's a couple articles that the board was considering. And I believe we had 3 on the agenda. So Article 5 and 6 are about class and compensation. The board in the past hasn't taken a position on this. I put this on the list to be discussed simply because there's increase in the salary ranges. And as you may recall in the budget, we added money in the salaries in anticipation that something would change in the class and comp plans. And Article 5 is updated on the personnel board's website. And so, like I said, the board hasn't taken a position on these before, but I put it on there just because I thought you should at least talk about it. But like I said, in the budget, if this is passed, we do have the money, a little extra money we put in the budget for market adjustments.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have any thoughts on Articles 5 and 6? Do we want to have any position in this? I don't feel we need to. It is kind of a standard article each year, but Mary, you have some input.
I just have a brief comment. Article 6 isn't going to be moved.
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful.
Article 6 was put in there in case the consultant didn't complete
Exactly,
Article 5.
exactly.
I think it's
So-
non-controversial.
Yeah, I think it's non-controversial. I don't think we need to take a position on it. I just want to make sure that other board members feel the same. Seeing no hands go up, let's move on to, we're not going to take a position on Article 5. And we'll move on to Article 22, which is the other one that we need to take a position on. Dave, do you want to tee
Sure.
this up?
This is a citizen petition for municipal and town solar for a task force to be created.
I think we're all generally familiar with this article. At our last discussion, we were talking about potentially drafting an amendment but we did not receive, Alice didn't receive any feedback on the wording. So what is the thoughts of the board on this article? We were 4-1 in support of Article 38 last year. At our last discussion, we sound generally supportive of this article, but we had some concerns about the light plant's participation as it was outlined. Does anyone have a statement that they want to make about this article or thoughts? Pam?
Yeah, I don't, it's not really, I consider it rather unclear as an article, and therefore I'm reluctant about it for that reason. I think that there's a need for these various groups who have an interest to collaborate with each other well to make this work. But I'm not entirely comfortable with the way it's drafted. It just doesn't seem clear to me.
How?
And yeah,
How does it not seem fair?
I didn't say fair. I just said it just reaffirmation of rationale for municipal. I mean, the bullets are to me rather unclear, but
Okay.
I don't want to get beyond that.
Well, let's start with a quick straw poll on whether or not we want to affirm what's the correct wording, whether or not we want to support the article or not. You know, I'm in support of the article. Warren, your thoughts?
I don't know. I can't really figure out what to do on it. In general, I'm in support of it, but I also think that some of it's unclear and it would be better if there was an amendment, but I'm not sure whether it's practical to propose an amendment, whether that would likely carry the day or not.
I think instead of amendment, we'll make a statement about reservations. So I think the plan is for the board to take a position to either support or not support, and then give a statement about any reservations. I don't think an amendment is really the right process, as this is a citizen petition. And we thought about that last meeting. We didn't get input, and I don't want to defer again on any kind of. So Alice, can you share your thoughts?
So I am also in support of the article, and I think that it is a citizen petition saying that, you know, last year most of us supported the article. And unfortunately, the life plan wasn't able to meet the deadlines that the article had put out there, which we knew were going to be very tight, especially given all of the other activities of the life plan with AMS and COVID and everything else. So this helps, I think, move it along, and I would be supportive of it. And the language, I think, is something, as you probably remember from Article 51, it may be iterative as you get into the discussion of each of these items to be able to broaden the scope of what it says. It doesn't have to be a literal translation of each of these items, because other things may come up and some may drop off. So I think that the idea here is, and I think this is what the petitioners were interested in, just seeing some progress on developing a plan. And the light plant itself is fairly thin right now. They're really strapped on getting the AMS out, and I don't want to deter from that project. That's a huge impact. So I would vote to support it.
Okay. Pam, do you want to?
Well, yeah, I just
Your thoughts?
I have trouble understanding what this is, how it's going to be actually effectuated and I have some issues with how into the weeds it goes. For example, bullet number 4, financial analysis of cash flows and assessment of the various business models for development and deployment. Those sorts of things give me pause, but less pause if it's understood that this will be collaborative with those who are really much expert at this. And I imagine that is what's going to happen. I think that I could go ahead with it if I understood. I think the idea of us supporting it with comments is excellent, but I haven't seen the comments. So I guess.
Yeah.
Fine to support it, but.
This is often, citizen petitions often are very imperfect. But I think I don't see anything in this article that says the output of this is fixed in stone. And so this is the development of a plan. And this is not a, hard and fast, must be followed to the letter prescription. This is something that says we need to have not just a goal, but milestones and an outline of where we're going, and get into the weeds of solving some of the barriers to meeting this goal. That is good. And so I think the output from this task force is going to be a plan for how we're going to do it. But I think ultimately the decisions on projects, viability, moving forward is still our role. So I'm in support of this article. Yes, I could give input to tweak it one way or the other, but I think that will come out in the process of the task force.
If I can respond just quickly to, and this is a conversation I think that has occurred in the past on the light board, often between me and Alice. If the light plant is stretched too thin, which is one of the explanations for the delay, and the delay in getting a plan forward, I think, is one of there's a real frustration there, which I really understand. But if the concern is that the staff is too thin, I continue to repeat my suggestion that Dave needs to get more staff of the appropriate skill mix, obviously, to deal with what I've always called the inflection point we're at with respect to the direction the town is taking and the need for enhanced expertise to help Dave move this stuff along. I think having volunteer task force help take care of staffing issues is not the way to go.
Yeah.
And to the extent that this is what's going on here, I think it's not a good solution.
It's imperfect, yes.
I just want to remind the board that a vote of the board does not need to be unanimous. And if
Correct.
we have dissenting views, that's part of our comment in our statement. That
Yep.
we were not unanimous, and these are the reasons.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And I also, the creation of this task force is going to draw on staff resources. There's no way to avoid that. This is going to require staff time. So, Laura.
Yeah, I just want to point out that if the thought is that this task force will speed up the development of the plan, that is not true. It will slow it down. And it will slow it down because now, instead of just performing all the analysis ourselves, we have to bring along an entire group of people and explain to them all the issues that go into this equation. That will definitely slow it down. It will not speed it up. I believe I said at the last meeting that I definitely could support a task force, but it needs to be much more narrowly focused on certain areas where we don't have time to complete tasks. And as examples, I gave you, there were open spaces that have been mentioned in the past that had hair on them, they had problems with them. And those need to be run to ground to see if that property can or cannot be used. One is land that abuts the Hanscom Air Force Base. Okay, somebody's got to meet with those people, and those are all very time-consuming tasks that staff doesn't necessarily have time to do. So I can see how a task force would be very helpful there. But I don't see a task force being helpful in calculating a financial payback, where we would just have to explain all the elements that go into that equation, right, to do an analysis we can do ourselves. That's not what is holding us up. And to try to bring a group of non-professionals up to speed with regard to a lot of the technical aspects of this, and there are a lot of technical aspects in terms of impediments, in terms of even if we can find space, the system simply cannot integrate more solar until we make improvements to the distribution system. And those improvements can be one of many. We've talked about batteries, but there are other solutions. There's the pushback, which involves transmission tariff, which is legal analysis. There is the improvements to the distribution grid, the
There's
potential
curtailment.
for, capacitor banks, and, it just goes on and on and on in terms of the technical detail. And I just don't see how a task force that is charged with the entire nut would actually be helpful in getting the project done. That's just my opinion.
Good points. Thank you.
Yeah, and they're all very good points. I feel generally as a management style, I like the big tent, bring everybody along from the beginning, because you tend to get, it's easy to get agreement at the end. It's harder at the beginning to involve everybody, but I think that citizens need more education on some of these barriers and so forth. So yes, I do agree it will go slower, but I think it might be more valuable in the end. Pam.
Yeah, I just wanted, I think Laura captured concretely some of my concerns, and I really strongly believe that there are governance and expertise issues that are directed by the town at certain places. And this is one of those places where a lot of what is needed resides at the light plant with light plant expertise. And I think sort of creating a diaspora of additional volunteers, well-meaning, is fine, but I don't think it's appropriate here, except if it were done very narrowly. And on that basis, I have a feeling I might abstain from this, because I do understand the frustration of the people in town who are mounting this petition, but I don't think it serves us well, and therefore I'm likely to abstain.
Warren.
Or vote no, depending on how things turn out with the comments.
Again, it doesn't have to be a unanimous vote.
I just want to make my views clear, that's all.
Thank you.
I think Laura raised some really good points, and hopefully there will be an opportunity for Laura and Dave to meet with the task force after it's established and to raise those points. And if the folks on the task force are wise, they would focus their efforts on the places where they will provide the greatest value added. And they won't put so much effort into things where they're gonna duplicate work from the staff of the light plant. And, I think there would be an opportunity for Laura and Dave to try to have a role in influencing what the folks on this committee really focus their efforts on.
Yeah, I believe the mix is Dave selects Dave himself, or someone he appoints is going to be one of the 5 members. And we have 3 citizens at large, and I am at the moment forgetting what the other
Cab.
from CAB.
Member from CAB.
Member of CAB. So so there will be someone of Dave's choosing directly participating. I plan to at least be in the audience on these meetings to keep updated on it. So I think there's not going to be without input from the light plant, but it isn't being led by, it's being led by CAB, which is not the light plant. And it's it touches a lot of core parts to the CMLP business that many people don't understand. So that is a concern, but I think the petitioner's point is the public needs to see some kind of progress, and this was their suggestion on how to move forward. And there is a general sentiment that people do want to see the solar in town. But it's weird. There's a certain group that really wants to see solar in town, and there's a group that doesn't want to look at solar panels every day. So I think this would be good in the sense, I think Laura's point about selecting sites and digging through the details on each location. I think that's a great thing for this group to work on, in finding viable sites that community members feel that might be good, and then do the research to make sure they're viable.
And if we, I have to just point out that we talked earlier, I think Jason brought it up, or no, somebody did, that the links on our webpage to the previous studies and documents are dated back to 2010. So they are a bit outdated, and it's timely for us to revisit some of the decisions and outcomes of what's intended.
Yeah,
Those are
and-
fairly old documents.
And even in those documents, the 2010 document especially talks about the unknowns at that time, and that more study will be needed. So it's very
It's
appropriate.
appropriate.
So I'm gonna ask for support or not supporting the article from each of the board members, and then we will do some kind of statement of reservations that we can agree on. So I'm in support of this article. I do have some reservations, but we'll get to that. Alice,
I'm in support of the article.
Warren,
Support.
and Pam.
I'm abstaining for now, and I know that can sound like not being courageous enough to take a position. I just think the most courageous thing for me to do is to have the integrity not to go there yet. I wonder.
So when we make a statement, I want to ask Pam this. So when we make a statement at town meeting that we are in support of the article, because we have 3 members here that are supportive, how should we phrase your abstaining? Should we just simply say one member decided to abstain? Should we say, because I don't want to say it's a unanimous decision. That's what
Well, I mean, is it possible for me to see the comment before we?
Yeah, all right.
Although it might be wise for Pam to draft the comment that she would want to have as reflecting her views on her abstention or denial of the project.
I'm not abstaining, or I'm not taking a position on abstention or denial. I'm taking a position on what we finally come up with as a board, and
The
that's
board
all.
is saying, okay, if the sense of the board, 3 of the 4 voting members here today are in support of the article. So I think it's appropriate for us to say that we, 3 of 4 voting members voted to support the article, 1 abstained, so we can abstained or voted.
Yeah.
Stay
No.
spending hearing what the comment is. That's all.
Yeah, so now let's move to that, Pam. Let's
Can I get a point of order? This really isn't under a formal vote. You're taking a sense here. Is that correct?
yeah, I did not make a motion. You're correct, Dean. So
Thank
let me make so we're gonna have a statement, Pam, about our reservations as a board. But let me go ahead and make a formal vote to Pam, sorry, Alice, do you mind making the motion?
Sure. I move that this board take a position of affirmative action on Article 22.
Great.
Second.
Warren? Second, thank you. Pam, you want to abstain?
I'm abstaining. Okay, I'll abstain for now.
I'll be supportive. And Alice?
Support.
Warren?
Support.
Great. So formal vote, 3 supportive, 1 abstention, 1 absent. So now to any kind of statement about reservations. I think this might be best done if members email me their reservations to draft a statement. So Pam, you're gonna send an email with some of your reservations about this article.
Sure.
And I will, and Alice, if you
Wait
have.
a minute, am I the only one sending in comments? Could you, I
No, no,
mentioned comments. I heard we were going to make comments, so
yeah,
now I just want to make sure that I understand what the comments are.
I have no comments to the article.
Okay.
I'm willing to vote to support it as is. and know that it will be changed or reiterated over time as they get into the nitty-gritty of their work and being advised by the like plans.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Laura made some really good points. So those are not comments that I would change or add to the article. Those are the realities of any task force or any committee who's entrusted with the appointed authority to do this job. And if things don't work, just as the Article 51 task force did, made some adjustments as it went along and how it was going to approach Article 51 and setting greenhouse gas goals. So I would trust that we have smart people able to, move with this as it goes along. So
Yeah.
I personally have no additional comments to add.
Yeah.
If nobody's going to comment, then,
Well,
that's-
let me finish. So yeah, I don't have any comments. Warren, do you have comments that you want to add?
No, I'm convinced by Alice that we don't need to make comments.
All right. I am still willing to make comments, Pam, if you wish for me to do so.
I'm just going to keep the face of the article. I'm abstaining because it's not clear, it's too broad, and that's it. I don't want to belabor this. I don't think we need to go through it at town meeting. We're voting to approve the article, which is perfectly fine. I'm abstaining. Okay.
So I will make a statement as chair at the meeting to say that we support the article 3 with 1 abstention and 1 absence, and pretty much that's it. We trust that the scope of this will change and will reflect any new information that comes to the task force.
I'd be happy to draft a statement from the board if you'd like and send it to you.
That'd be helpful.
If you drafted a statement from the board, I might approve the article.
Okay. Great. Warren.
I don't know if you'd let me do this to go back to the nuclear discussion, because I had a revelation while I was sitting here
Great.
around.
Well,
Let's take that genius.
Yeah, let me make sure. I feel that we're closing out the discussion of town meeting articles. We've done
Yes. Yeah.
5 and 22. We've made decisions on the other 4. So
23.
do we have to discuss 23?
It's whether we are in support of the approving the stretch energy code.
I believe we
You
did that.
guys-
Oh, did we
Yeah.
already decide that? In the
Yes.
formal
Last
vote?
meeting, yeah.
Oh, great.
We were, I
Okay.
believe, unanimously supportive of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, Warren, what's your epiphany?
Yeah, there are 2 really very different nuclear discussions and debates one could have. One is, what's the future role of nuclear power in the clean energy mix in this country? And you can get advocates in there who will come in and talk about the need to develop new nuclear power plants. And a lot of the pro-nuclear people will do that. I think that's a bad discussion to have. That's not the choice for us. And personally, I don't see the need for developing new nuclear power plants in New England. That's not what we're faced with. The choice is, should the existing nuclear power plant in the region be maintained online, and should they be considered as carbon-free power? And that should be the focus of the discussion. And we should try to steer away from getting in people who are gonna talk about the value of, hey, we need to build a lot of new nuclear power plants going forward, because that for certain will become a very emotional and acrimonious discussion.
Good point.
That is a good revelation you had. That is a good point to be made. Because yes,
Thank you, Warren.
that's the reality. The reality is we're buying from existing plants. We're not supporting the development of a new plant.
Yeah, do we think, the choice for the town, is it worth supporting and maintaining the existing nuclear power plants online? Or should there be a push to retire them early? That's really scope of any debate, I would think.
Yeah, that's great. I'll add that into my notes. We are at the point now where we're doing public and liaison comments. So if anyone would like to, Mary.
Thank you, Brian. The discussion you had about Article 22 was very good. I learned a lot. The select board hasn't taken a position on that, and I think someone from the select board will have time at town meeting to or talk about our position. So one of the things that happened in the discussion that you had that was important to me when I decide what to vote is I think you pivoted from an article that looked like the town was going to do work that wasn't being done to an article that is going to be directed and helpful to CMLP. So that was to me, that was an important switch. So if in your statement you can somehow emphasize that, I think that would go a long way towards helping our discussion. So again, it's more of a we're going to do what hasn't been being done to we're going to help CMLP at their direction to do what needs to be done, if that's what I heard. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's the last part, the at CMLP's direction. This is being led by CAB under the article. So I think you're referring to my comment that followed up on Laura's saying that citizens could be very helpful in drilling down to the barriers of particular sites and the legwork. I think that is a good point to be made.
I think I heard the word advice. You were gonna the advice of CMLP was going to be integral to the work that this task force does. I think that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Direction might have been not what you said, my word.
Okay. Mark.
Thank you. Also on Article 22, I think it is appropriate that the Light Board be generally supportive of this. I think that the goal of establishing the plan for in-town solar is an important one. I had made this comment or a similar comment at the Select Board meeting. I note that the Climate Action Board has been expanded through the combination of the CSEC and the Climate Action Advisory Committee. And that means they have a lot of people. And so I know Dean's on here, and I was wondering whether there might be some formulation of this instead of being a standalone task force, is maybe being some kind of subcommittee of that relatively large committee to the end that I believe you alluded to, Brian, which is a larger, broader set of support for the solar program and clearing some of those obstacles that Laura referred to. So I would actually like to see this work go forward. I'm not sure that we need a completely new task force. I think that creating it as a task for the expanded Climate Action Board to accomplish as part of their goals in a year would both broaden the support, because it would add that to an important discussion of other climate priorities, as well as maybe be able to focus on some of those things that we really do need to build community support around, which are, it comes down to siting. The issues when we looked at the last solar siting committee were, finding the places, finding those rooftops, finding those locations, and then clearing the obstacles that invariably come up with each and every site, and that's community commitment. I agree with Laura wholeheartedly that it doesn't make sense to have a bunch of citizens trying to re-engineer the distribution grid or something like that. That's not useful work for this board. So I'd appreciate it, or those are my thoughts. And maybe if there's some dialogue that can go on between the petitioner and the various boards so that the statements come along in those directions, that would be helpful. And we could potentially avoid creating a task force, since we do have a very large Climate Action Board at the moment that could probably handle this task.
Yeah, that goes to the idea of an amendment and so forth, which we've already kind of worked away from. So I think it's right now the board is making a decision to support the article. And like Alice said, once things get implemented, I know your comment was about not implementing a task force, but I think we're in support of that.
I would
So
point
the
out that
select board
in other citizen petitions that have proposed task forces, like the Personnel Study Task Force, that was eventually negotiated away from even being a motion because there was an understanding that the select board was going to do something, that it was going to be, how it was going to be handled, and the spirit was accomplished without actually having to have the town meeting prescription go on. And so that's why I'm
Yeah.
suggesting that there's even still time for that kind of negotiation. I think that taking a position that says, go ahead and do it anyway, is a good position for the light board.
Thank
So
you.
the select board does have the authority under the language now to appoint 3 at-large members to a 5-member committee or a task force, whatever we call it. And those members could come from a combination of CAB and CSEC in the new formed committee. It's not restrictive in who they appoint to that committee.
I think,
So it can't tap those people.
yeah,
It sits with the select board to do that.
okay. Pam Hill.
I just wanted to say that I think that Mark is getting at something here with trying to, we have existing task forces, existing numbers of very committed expert members of the public, and to have it done by the approach that Mark suggested, which is essentially a collaboration among the pre-existing expertise, I would imagine, would make it, I think, would be much better, and I would vote for that.
Yeah, but that's
I know it's too late.
not in
but
our control.
I just speaking maybe to Mary and to Mark that I think those are a collaborative effort among pre-existing people who clearly have a commitment and have demonstrated expertise, instead of creating yet another task force, which I think does do things that Laura so ably described as problematic, would be much, much better.
Okay. Pamela Dritt.
Pamela, 13 Concord Green. I have a small concern about our long-term nuclear contracts, only in that cheap as they are, which I strongly approve, the plummeting cost of solar, wind, and battery power put together has already become the cheapest form of energy supply in existence. It beats hydro, it beats nuclear, it beats gas powered from the levelized cost of energy. And we should, so I don't want our support for, I want us to be aware on the long-term contract front to hope to get solar, wind, and battery generating sources better for us so that we still have time, still have capacity for that. And also that's why we need to generate it in town too, because we'll end up with a distributed grid that is much cheaper than buying energy from outside as
Great.
much as we can. And I strongly support Article 22, and thank you for adopting it.
Well, great. Thank you for the comment. Any other public comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Alice?
So moved.
So moved. A second? Can I get a thumbs up? Can I get a second on a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Great. Thank you, Warren. Warren?
Yeah, approve.
Alice?
Yeah.
Pam? And I agree as well. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a
Bye.
good day.
Thanks.